welcome to another Born on This Day ASMR series celebrating 365 birthdays. Today is March 2nd, the day of Undying Loyalty. Do you have undying loyalty? We are reading again from The Secret Language of Birthdays by Gary Goldschneider and Drew Stelfers. This book is a work of personology. A day is a year, is a lifetime, is an age. Personology combines history, psychology, numerology, tarot, and astrology to form a personality guide for each person based on their day of birth. The figures throughout history paint a picture, and there's also what is the grand cycle of life, or the yearly cycle of all the days and personalities blended together, forming an unending whirl of existence. There are 4 quadrants corresponding to the 4 seasons and the 4 distinct ages of man, the waxing and waning of change, objective, subjective of manifestations, and the conscious, unconscious orientations. What are you conscious of? What are you unconscious toward? And how does this day define you? If today is your birthday, happy birthday. If you want every day to be your birthday, then happy birthday as well. Thank you for joining me, and let's begin. The day of undying loyalty. The highly dependable individuals born on March 2nd display an unusually strong sense of loyalty, and which can manifest in relation to their family, friends, nation, or perhaps a higher cause. A higher cause than family, friends, or nation? Ridiculous. Preposterous. Those born on this day tend to hold the object of their passion in the greatest esteem, even to grant it adoration or worship. Rarely, if ever, will they forsake their commitments once they have given themselves fully. But it is precisely their unswerving loyalty that can present problems for March 2nd people. It can be pretty uncomfortable at times for others to be the object of such feelings. In fact, care, concern, or devotion can both be a source of great security and inhibition to those involved with them. As parents, those born on this day may experience difficulties with sons or daughters who hold a contrary value system and wish to be free to go their own way. More highly developed March 2nd people do not lock others into static roles, but allow for change in family, friends, and those they admire. Their loyalty is not conditional or something to provide themselves with a sense of security, but remains constant through the evolution of people and entities. March 2nd individuals go through periods where they devote themselves exclusively to their work. Particularly if this work is of a creative nature, they may block out everything else. This not only isolates them from those uninvolved in their efforts, but can make them one-track personalities. March 2nd people may overlook the fact that remaining open to varying experiences ultimately enriches their work. March 2nd people are often unable or unwilling to disentangle themselves from commitments when things begin going in a bad direction. Though in such no-win situations, they may still find a way to turn this around. The sacrifice required can be great. On the other hand, should everything ultimately fall apart, those born on this day are likely to move on fresh, perhaps to a completely new area of endeavor. Win or lose, they are secure in the knowledge that they have given their best. One of the most important challenges for March 2nd people is finding a balance between their need to develop more personal individual goals on the one hand, and their desire to give themselves to more universal causes on the other. Learning to deal with the here and now and to meet personal challenges is one of the highest first priority for those born on this day. For only when their own house is in order will they be able to give their best to worldly or idealistic endeavors. The weaknesses of those born on this day, they are often out of touch, inflexible, and obsessive. The strengths of those born on this day are they are loyal, imaginative, and perseverant. So if a weak side of you is being out of touch and inflexible and obsessive, this is people looking at you and disregarding what you've got your mind and heart set on. And this is a common recurring theme in everyone's life, where they are often set on something without being in sync with themselves, or are too invested in themselves and being in sync without having a regard for the way it can happen. So this is where your imagination has the ability to help you flourish, because you can imagine a better way to do things than you're currently doing them, or imagine the relief of it being done as you take steps to fulfill your goals. I didn't even realize my room was kind of messy, but I guess I was just thinking, as long as I can promote the turtle shell backpack, everything will be okay. Numbers and planets. Those born on the 2nd of the month are ruled by the number 2 and by the moon. Those ruled by the number 2 often make good co-workers and partners, rather than leaders, a quality that can help March 2nd people in their jobs and relationships. However, the moon influences can also act as a brake on individual initiative and action, producing frustration. This is further enhanced by the moon having strongly reflective and passive tendencies. When moon influences are combined in March 2nd people with the Neptunian qualities of Pisces, they can indicate a highly romantic, idealistic individual. However, those born on March 2nd must be careful not to allow their mental energy to be diffused or misdirected. They should be wary of spiritual groups which are overly solicitous. They should be wary of spiritual groups which are overly solicitous. The planets. Astrology traditionally speaks of 10 principal heavenly bodies which can be viewed from the earth. The 2 luminaries, sun and moon. Today is the day of the moon. 3 inner planets, Mercury, Venus, Mars, and 5 outer planets, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto. All of these, including sun and moon, are called planets, and each represents a different facet of the human personality. The names of the planets largely derive from classical Greek and Roman mythology, and their symbolism from the gods and goddesses which they represent. Every planet serves as an astrological indicator as well as a heavenly body. In this book, the rulership of both astrological signs and numbers by planets gives important clues to the personality of those born on each day. Neptune was the king of the sea in classical mythology, and his trident is symbolized in the glyph of this watery planet. Neptunian people can be profound, dreamy, diffuse, and difficult to pin down. Fantasy-rich, the minds of Pisces and those ruled by the number 7 are often attracted to highly imaginative objects. Neptunian energies invariably exert an irresistibly magnetic influence, able to dissolve away barriers of a more rigid and absolute nature. The moon stirs the depths of Earth's oceans and regulates not only the tides, but also human emotions. Reflective in nature, the moon symbolizes the world of dreams, unconscious feelings, and powerful emotions. Emotions. Traditionally feminine orientation of Earth's principal satellite. Stresses, reflective and empathic human tendencies. Those ruled by the number 2 and the sign of Cancer are strongly lunar influenced, and thus tend to be feeling types who work well with others in group projects. And now for some mythology on the moon. Endymion. This youth, whose name is so famous, has a very short history. Some of the poets who say he was a king Some of the poets say he was a hunter, but most of them say he was a shepherd. All agree that he was a youth of surpassing beauty, and that this was the cause of his singular fate. Endymion the Shepherd, as his flock he guarded, she, the moon, Selene, saw him, loved him, sought him, coming down from heaven to the glade on Latmus, kissed him, lay beside him, blessed his fortune, evermore he slumbers, tossing not nor turning, Endymion the Shepherd. He never woke to see the shining silvery form bending over him. In all the stories about him, he sleeps forever, immortal but never conscious. Wondrously beautiful, he lies on the mountainside, motionless and remote, as if in death, but warm and living. And night after night, the moon visits him and covers him with her kisses. It is said that this magic slumber was her doing. She lulled him to sleep so that she might always find him and caressed him as she pleased. But it is said too that her passion brings her only a burden of pain, fraught with many sighs. The first thing to arise from the surface of the sea was a black, poisonous smoke, called Kalakuta, Black Summit, namely the highest concentration of the power of death. "Drink me," said Kalakuta, and the operation could not proceed until someone should be found capable of drinking it up. Shiva, sitting aloof and afar, was approached. Magnificently he relaxed from his position of deeply indrawn meditation and proceeded to the scene of the churning of the milky ocean. Taking the tincture of death in a cup, he swallowed it at a gulp, and by his yoga power held it in his throat. The throat turned blue, hence Shiva is addressed as Blue Neck, Nilakantha. The churning now being resumed, presently there began, coming up out of the inexhaustible depths, precious forms of concentrated power. Apsaras, nymphs, appeared, Lakshmi, the goddess of fortune, the milk-white horse named Uchaya Shravas. And forgive my pronunciation if it's wrong. I'm just working with what I can do. The nymphs, the goddess of fortune, the milk-white horse, whose name means neighing aloud, the pearl of gems, Kautstuba, and other objects to the number of 13. Last to appear was the skilled physician of the gods, Dhanvantari, holding in his hand the moon, the cup of the nectar of life. Now began immediately a great battle for possession of the invaluable drink. One of the Titans, Rahu, managed to steal a sip, but was beheaded before the liquor passed his throat. His body decayed, but the head remained immortal, and this head now goes pursuing the moon forever through the skies, trying again to seize it. When it succeeds, the cup passes easily through its mouth, and out again at its throat. That is why we have eclipses of the moon. But Vishnu, concerned lest the gods should lose the advantage, transformed himself into a beautiful dancing damsel. And while the Titans, who were lusty fellows, stood spellbound by the girl's charm, she took up the moon cup of Amrita, teased them with it for a moment, and then suddenly passed it over to the gods. Vishnu immediately again transformed himself into a mighty hero, joined the gods against the Titans, and helped drive away the enemy to the crags and dark canyons of the world beneath. The gods now dine on the Amrita forever, in their beautiful palaces on the summit of the central mountain of the world, Mount Sumeru. A myth from Southeast Africa, collected from the Wahangwe Makoni tribe of South Rhodesia, displays the aspects of the Venus Mother in coordination with the first stages of the cosmogonic cycle. Here the original man is the moon, the morning star his wife, the evening star his second. Just as Vainaimoinen emerged from the womb by his own act, so this moon man emerges from the abysmal waters. He and his wives are to be the parents of the creatures of the earth. The story comes to us. Maori, God, made the first man and called him Muetse, the moon. Or just moon, Muetse, moon. He put him on the bottom of a dissolva lake and gave him a Nagona horn filled with Nagona oil. Muetse lived in dissolva. Muetse said to Maori, I want to go on the earth. Maori, God, said, you will rue it. Muetse said, nonetheless, I want to go on the earth. Maori said, then go on the earth. Muetse went out of dissolva and on to the earth. The earth was cold and empty. There were no grasses, no bushes, no trees. There were no animals. Muetse wept and said to Maori, how shall I live here? Maori said, I warned you. You have started on the path at the end of which you shall die. I will, however, give you one of your kind. Maori, God, gave Muetse a maiden who was called Masasi, the morning star. Maori said, Masasi shall be your wife for 2 years. Maori gave Masasi a fire maker. In the evening, Muetse went into a cave with Masasi. Masasi said, help me, we will make a fire. I will gather chimandra, kindling, and you can twirl the rusika, revolving part of the fire maker. Masasi gathered kindling. Muetse twirled the rusika. When the fire was lighted, Muetse lay down on one side of it, Masasi on the other. The fire burned between them. Muetse thought to himself, why has Maori given me this maiden? What shall I do with this maiden, Masasi? When it was night, Muetse took his Nagona horn. He moistened his index finger with a drop of Nagona oil. Muetse said, Ndini chambuka mihili ne mihira. I am going to jump over the fire. Muetse jumped over the fire. Muetse approached the maiden, Masasi. Muetse touched Masasi's body with the ointment on his finger. Then Muetse went back to his bed and slept. When Muetse wakened in the morning, he looked over to Masasi. Muetse saw that Masasi's body was swollen. When day broke, Masasi began to bear. Masasi bore grasses. Masasi bore bushes. Masasi bore trees. Masasi did not stop bearing till the earth was covered with grasses, bushes, and trees. When the trees grew, they grew till their tops reached the sky. When the tops of the trees reached the sky, it began to rain. Muetse and Masasi lived in plenty. They had fruits and grain. Muetse built a house. Muetse made an iron shovel. Muetse made a hoe and planted crops. Masasi plaited fish traps and caught fish. Masasi fetched wood and water. Masasi cooked. Thus Muetse and Masasi lived for 2 years. After 2 years, Maui said to Masasi, the time is up. Maui took Masasi from the earth and put her back in Disvoa. Muetse wailed. He wailed and wept and said to Maori, what shall I do without her? Who will fetch wood and water for me? Who will cook for me? 8 days long, Muetse wept. 8 days long, Muetse wept. Then Maori said, I have warned you that you are going to your death. But I will give you another woman. I will give you Morongo, the evening star. Morongo will stay with you for 2 years. Then I shall take her back again. Maori gave Muetse Morongo. Morongo came to Muetse in the hut. In the evening, the Moon Man wanted to lie down on his side of the fire. Morongo said, "Do not lie down over there. Lie with me." Moetsi lay down beside Morongo. Moetsi took the Nagona horn, put some ointment on his index finger. But Morongo said, "Don't be like that. I am not Masasi. Now smear your loins with Nagona oil." "Smear my loins with Nagona oil." Moetsi did as he was told. Morongo said, "Now couple with me." Moetsi coupled with Morongo. The Moon Man went to sleep. Towards morning, Moetsi woke. As he looked over to Morongo, he saw that her body was swollen. As day broke, Morongo began to give birth. The first day, Morongo gave birth to chickens, sheep, goats. The second night, Moetsi slept with Morongo again. The next morning, she bore eland and cattle. The third night, Moetsi slept with Morongo again. The next morning, Morongo bore first boys and then girls. The boys who were born in the morning were grown up by nightfall and were men. On the fourth night, Moetsi wanted to sleep with Morongo again, but there came a thunderstorm, and Maori spoke. "Let be. You are going quickly to your death." Moetsi, the Moon Man, was afraid. The thunderstorm passed over. When it had gone, Morongo said to Moetsi, "Make a door, and then use it to close the entrance to the hut. Then Maori will not be able to see what we are doing. Then you can sleep with me." Moetsi made a door. With it he closed the entrance to the hut. Then he slept with Morongo. And once again, the Moon Man slept. So a lot of sleeping is going on. Towards morning, Moetsi, the Moon Man, woke. Again, Moetsi saw that Morongo's body was swollen. Again, as day broke, Morongo began to give birth. Morongo bore lions, leopards, snakes, and scorpions. Maori saw it. Maori said to Moetsi, "I warned you." On the fifth night, Moetsi wanted to sleep with Morongo again. But Morongo said, "Look, your daughters are grown. Couple with your daughters." Moetsi looked at his daughters. He saw that they were beautiful and that they were grown up. So he slept with them. They bore children. The children which were born in the morning were full grown by night. And so Moetsi became the Mambo, king of a great people. But Morongo slept with the snake. Morongo no longer gave birth. She lived with the snake. One day Moetsi returned to Morongo and wanted to sleep with her. Morongo said, "Let be." Moetsi said, "But I want to." He lay with Morongo. Under Morongo's bed lay the snake. The snake bit Moetsi. Moetsi was sickened. After the snake had bitten Moetsi, Moetsi was sickened. The next day it did not rain. The plants withered, the rivers and lakes dried, the animals died, people began to die. Many people died. Moetsi's children asked, "What can we do?" Moetsi's children said, "We will consult the Hakata, sacred dice." The children consulted the Hakata. The Hakata said, "Moetsi, the Mambo, the king, is sick and pining. Send Moetsi back to the Disvoa." Thereupon Moetsi's children strangled Moetsi and buried him. They buried Morongo with the Moon Man. Then they chose another man to be Mambo. Morongo too had lived for 2 years in Moetsi's Zimbabwe. It is clear that each of the 3 stages of the procreation represents an epoch in the development of the world. The pattern for the procession was foreknown, almost as something already observed. This is indicated by the warning of the All-Highest. But the Moon Man, the mighty living one, would not be denied the realization of his destiny. The conversation at the bottom of the lake is the dialogue of eternity and time, the colloquy of the quick, to be or not to be. Unquenchable desire is finally given its rope. Movement begins. The wives and daughters of the Moon Man are the personifications and precipitators of his destiny. With the evolution of his world creative, will the virtues and features of the goddess mother I feel like there's a typo there. With the evolution of I just knocked over a plate where I had my tea. With the evolution of his world creative, will the virtues and features of the goddess mother were metamorphosed. Will? Oh, his world creative will. I was reading it wrong. With the evolution of his world creative will, the Moon Man's world creative will, the virtues and features of the goddess mother were metamorphosed. After the birth from the elemental womb, the first two wives were pre-human, suprahuman. But as the cosmogonic round proceeded and the growing moment passed from its primordial to its human historical forms, the mistresses of the cosmic births withdrew, and the field remained to the women of men. Thereupon the old demiurgic sire, in the midst of his community, became a metaphysical anachronism. When at last he grew tired of the merely human and yearned back again to the wife of his abundance, the world sickened a moment under the pull of his reaction, but then released itself and ran free. The initiative passed to the community of the children. The symbolic, dream-heavy parental figures subsided into the original abyss. Only man remained on the furnished earth. The cycle had moved on. Moetsi, the Moon Man, was cut loose, like a fouled anchor. The community of the children floated free into the day world of waking consciousness. But we are told that there existed among them direct sons of the now submarine father, who, like the children of his first begetting, had grown from infancy to manhood in a single day. These special carriers of cosmic power constituted a spiritual and social aristocracy. Filled with a double charge of the creative energy, they were themselves sources of revelation. Such figures appear on the dawn stage of every legendary past. They are the cultural heroes, the city founders. I was trying to say cultural, but it says culture, and so I got tongue-tied. They are the culture heroes, the city founders, these children of the Moon Man. Tarot, the second card of the major arcana, is the Priestess. Shown seated on her throne, calm and impenetrable, she is a spiritual woman who reveals hidden forces and secrets, empowering those of us who heed her with that knowledge. Favorable qualities of this card are silence, intuition, reserve, and discretion. Negative traits are secretiveness, mistrust, and inertia. The High Priestess Ke2. The High Priestess sits with the crescent moon at her feet and a diadem on her head, showing the full moon set in 2 crescent moons. There is a solar cross on her breast, showing the union of the positive and negative life elements. The scroll in her lap is that of the Torah, divine law. It is only slightly unrolled, for the instruction contained therein is hidden, save for a partial glimpse from the ordinary human eye. A veil also covers half the scroll, thus intimating that only one half of the mystery of being can be comprehended. She sits between the pillars of the positive and negative forces. The black pillar, Boaz, represents the negative life principle, and the white one, Jachin, the positive life principle. The High Priestess is both eternal and the subconscious mind. She is the balancing power between the initiative and resistance. Thus she sits between the pillars. The veil between the pillars is decorated with pomegranates, female, and palms, male, symbols indicating that the subconscious is only potentially reproductive. Only when this veil is penetrated by the conscious through desires can creativity be actualized. Divinatory meaning, unrevealed future, silence, mystery, duality, hidden influences at work. Reversed, accepting surface knowledge, sensual enjoyment, conceit. Health. Those born on March 2nd must beware of living an overly fanciful life. All sorts of psychological problems can arise if they get out of touch with the practical concerns of the world. Structuring their lives and taking part in regular social as well as physical activities will help to ground them. All exercise of a team nature like competitive sports or of a social nature like workouts in a gym are strongly recommended. As far as diet is concerned, March 2nd, people do well to eat earthy foods, which may not be their favorites at all, such as grains, root vegetables, hearty soups, and stews. And again, this is something that's a little outdated now because it's understood that grains convert to sugar in your body. So you would actually want to be careful what grains you eat if you're trying to step away from being overly lethargic and fanciful, as this section of the book phrases it, because if you have the tendency to be overly fanciful, it means that you're not grounded in you're not even grounded in what you imagine if you're overly fanciful. Because imagination is the root of reality, which is again why root vegetables would benefit you, the same as soups and stews. Depending on the ingredients, these all symbolize the nomad lifestyle, or the cloaked wanderer who sits by the campfire and eats a hearty meal. Alcohol should be viewed with caution. All sorts of sensual activities with a loved one are recommended, as well as regular sexual expression. Sensuality is curious in the sense that you can regard every activity with a energy of sensation. So sensual activity is kind of a misdirection in the sense that sensuality derives from you applying your senses to any activity you do. And it's the same idea with sexual expression, is how do you express yourself sexually? This is not just a single moment in time. This is a lifestyle. Advice: ground yourself in the activities of everyday life. Let your mind roam, but also try to be realistic about what you wish to accomplish. No, don't neglect your own needs and development. Phasing out the ego might not be the proper direction for you. Which again goes back to what I have said before, that the ego death is still the death of yourself. So there's this popular trend of experiencing an ego death and all the different revelations you have. This is still just death. It's not death of a certain capacity, it's the death of yourself. So don't die. Just look at the direction you're going and the direction you're channeling yourself. Don't die. Meditation: God may not be so far away. And that's the end of this episode. If today is your birthday, happy birthday. And again, I know my tone is sometimes sarcastic, and I'm just kind of here for you. I'm glad to share this with you. And if you like this series, stay tuned. I'll be making one each day. Thanks. Bye. Bonus segment. Today is actually Dr. Seuss's birthday. My favorite Dr. Seuss books are the Bartholomew Cubbins Trilogy, which consists of the 500 Hats of Bartholomew Cubbins, The King's Stilts, and Bartholomew and the Oobleck. I still remember in school when we played with green slime and read Bartholomew and the Oobleck. I think it was in first grade. That was one of the defining moments of my education. The Dr. Seuss and the Seven Lady Godivas is actually a surprising book because it's an adult book by Dr. Seuss retelling the story of the Peeping Toms and the Lady Godivas, who are these 7 naked sisters who run around naked. And of course, in the actual legend, there was only one Peeping Tom and one Lady Godiva, but Dr. Seuss took it and quadrupled it into a big, amazing illustrated book for adults. Not many people knew that he actually made adult books, and he even did propaganda cartoons before he got into children's stories, or it may have just been around the same time. I have a biography of his I've been meaning to read, so it'll be interesting to see how all the different stories stacked up. But anyways, thank you for watching. Have a great day, great evening, sweet sleep, productive morning whenever this finds you. Glad we met, and I will see you soon.